Willie, come on up. Up, Willie, up. Up. Good boy. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for pressing play. Well, we're here at a place, well, that I've been driving past for almost 50 years now and never stopped. And, well, we finally had the opportunity. We're at the Hartsdale Pet Cemetery, and we're joined so graciously today by Ed Martin III. Can I just call you Ed?
Please.
All right. So Ed, thank you very much for joining us. And basically this cemetery is in your family, and you've been working here for quite a while, and I'm extremely interested in this place. And so I'm just going to sort of keep quiet while you take us on a tour of this wonderful, wonderful place. And of course, I also want to talk about the Shte article as well.
Sure, we
but
can do all
Ed,
that.
so where are we at right now in this property, and tell us all about it.
Sure, where I'm standing right now is the, we call it the carriage gate, and this was the original entrance to the cemetery. It's since been moved to the front in Central Avenue, which most people know about.
Right.
But this is where horse-drawn carriages would come through this gate right here, and they would, come to the house that you see over there, for the burial. The caskets were usually shipped up from Manhattan by train in lined caskets, and then they'd be greeted by a caretaker, and they just do the burial.
So, but briefly though, how'd this place come into existence, and what was here when this place started?
It really was an apple orchard. It was owned by a woman named Emily Berthet, and this, I guess, was her summer home. It was an apple orchard. And she had a vision that she wanted to make this into a place where pets could be buried. She loved animals. She was involved with first ASPCA, and that's where she met Dr. Samuel Johnson, who is the person that actually wound up running the cemetery initially.
So this land was originally hers. She donated it to who? Samuel Johnson? Or it remained?
It's a little murky about the relationship there, but she really just was involved in the very, very beginning genesis of it, and then Dr. Johnson is the one that really kind of brought it into being.
And so that was in 1896?
That's right. The first burial supposedly was in 1896.
And is that gravestone still in existence?
It's not. So the cemetery kind of started organically. They didn't know whether it was ever going to survive, and so what they did was they would have burials here, and they were really not documented in the beginning because they didn't know whether the cemetery was going to be a going concern. And then over the years, what happened was there were a lot of plot holders that had buried their pets here, and what used to happen back in the day is people would come to visit plots, whether it's a human cemetery or a pet cemeteries. They would come to visit the plots on the weekends, and they became friendly with each other, and they started scratching their head saying, hey, what happens if Dr. Johnson and Emily Berthet, something happens to them, what's going to happen to our pets, and what are our rights?
Right, it's kind of a murky legal situation.
Right.
As you say, like who owned the land, what was the deal with the land?
Yeah, so anything could happen, so they said, well, we want to secure our rights here. A few of them were lawyers, and they got together with Dr. Johnson, and they started putting some formalities into place. So the first thing was they created a corporation. So the cemetery is a C corporation.
Let's walk around a little bit.
Sure. They also deed restricted the land. What that means is that a legal deed restriction on the land means that if the cemetery was ever sold, and you see Central Avenue, there's shopping malls here and
this would
condos
be
and
prime
everything.
land
Be
for that.
prime land for that. So if a real estate agent came in here and said, "Hey, let's not have a cemetery anymore. Let's do something else," they'd be precluded from doing so because the only thing this land could ever be used for is pet burial. That's it. So that really protects the land from that situation from happening.
Right, and that's in perpetuity.
Forever.
Essentially.
Yeah. Yep. It's on file with Westchester County.
Wow.
So that was a huge thing. And then another thing that was really big was they established a perpetual care trust fund, and that ensures that the maintenance of the cemetery will always be done, and that's why the cemetery looks as beautiful as it does today. So that trust fund survived the Depression, actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I always wonder, like, how is a place like this taken care of you know, like where does the money come from? But you say a trust fund was set up.
Right, so there's two ways that the cemetery is maintained. One is by that trust fund. Plot holders have the option of either depositing funds into that by making a one-time lump sum payment, or they can do payments annually. But either way, the combination of those two payments come to pay for the maintenance of the cemetery. It kind of works the same way as common charges or the co-op apartment. Everybody contributes to grass cutting, leaf and snow removal, blacktopping footpaths, pruning trees, that kind of stuff.
Right. So how did your family end up in the realm of the Hartsdale Pet Cemetery? Why don't you...
That's a good question. So it was...
Because now we're talking, so Mr. John, it was
Dr. Johnson. He was a vet.
Johnson.
He had a business of an animal hospital in the city, and that's how he was referring his clients after their pets passed away here to be buried. There was, after Dr. Johnson died in the 30s, early 40s, the cemetery is being run by absentee ownership, really, and so they found two people that lived locally in Hartsdale, and their families came in and ran the cemetery actually on the grounds here, because Dr. Johnson ran it from Manhattan.
Manhattan, right.
So these people actually came in and they lived in this building that you see right here. And so the two families ran it until the early 70s. And then all of them either retired or died off, and it was really just left with one person. Her name was Irene Lassen. She had a son. He really didn't have an interest in running the cemetery, and so she was looking to get out. And so she approached my grandfather, my dad's father. He had a monument business, and he did a lot of the gravestones you see
He had
here.
a monument business, so he was into stone. Interesting, because I always thought that was heavily dominated by Italians for some reason.
Well, he's not him.
Not him. Because you always see Italian monument makers.
Right, right. I guess those are the marble ones.
Right.
He dealt mostly in granite, and his family had a monument business, the Caterson monument business, and then he had his own business after that in Valhalla. And one of his main clients was Hartsdale, and so he did a lot of the monument work here. And so Irene Lassen knew my grandfather very well. And when you're in this, I hate to even call this a business, but like there's a lot of relationships that you develop with people. You see them every day. They're grieving. They bare their souls to you.
Right.
And so you feel a very heavy responsibility to these people. And I mean, I also have my own pets buried here too. So you don't just want to pass the business off to just anybody.
Right.
You want to pass it off to somebody that you trust. And so that's who Irene Lassen was looking to do. She was looking to pass it off to someone she trusted. And so she approached my grandfather, and my grandfather kind of laughed because he's like, I'm almost as old as you. So I was like, I'm not looking to get into anything new. But he offered up my father, because my father is a CPA.
Okay.
And so he offered up my father in the context of maybe doing some retirement planning and tax planning and things like that. And so they met under those circumstances, and they hit it off really well. She trusted my father because of my grandfather, and my dad always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. He loved pets, and so she made him an offer, and he's like, well, I don't really have the money to pay for this, and so she said, I'll make it. It's more important to me that I pass this off to someone that I trust.
Right.
And so she said, you can pay me over time, and my dad got one of his childhood friends who was also a businessman as well, Pat Grosso, and the two of them came in 1974 and took over the cemetery from Mrs. Lassen. We brought in, they both brought in their families. So my dad brought in his mother, my grandmother, and she worked here from 1974 to 1991.
Wow.
Pat brought in his brother, and he worked here even longer than that. He was the foreman for years. And then, I spent many of my summers in high school cutting the grass here in the early 80s and everything.
This was a heavy-duty landscaping job.
Yeah.
That's my business, so I could see that,
So,
I would imagine just cutting the grass is such a pain with all the...
So when I first started working here, it was a little more spread out, so we actually could use lawnmowers.
Really?
But it still was a pain doing that. No, there's no question. Now everything is done with weed whackers because the graves are so filled in.
So in that article in the New York Times, which of course we'll talk about more of a little later, it had mentioned that so you tried the corporate life and it didn't work out for you. You want to expand a little plot?
I just always felt drawn here because I had worked here, and my dad really took a lot of time with me showing me every aspect of the business. He kind of did that with baseball too. When I was 5 years old, he was just tossing balls at me, and he taught me how to play baseball. It's kind of the way we bonded.
Right.
And when I came here, obviously, he was more of an indoor type person, so he kind of set me off with the outdoor people, and I did what I did. But when I got into like high school, 11th to 12th grade, he brought me inside and he showed me more administrative and bookkeeping type things. And he spent time, showing me what to do. And that was it. Then I went off to college, and even on my college breaks, I would come here and work. And then I went to work. I was also an accounting major, so I went to work for a big 8 accounting firm, Price Waterhouse. I came back to work here in between for a few more years, and it was kind of a critical time because we had gotten into the cremation business. And so we were kind of, there was a new type of, we had only done burial prior to that. So it was a new thing for us. And so it was kind of interesting to see how that was developed.
Right.
And then my dad he's like, I think it'd be good if you went to law school. And I did. I did that. I was a little bit older than most of the people I went to law school with. And when I came out, I went back to work at Price Waterhouse and did more tax work. And then there's only so much that I could do.
Listen,
it just wasn't for me.
You don't need to convince me. I mean, I spent my entire life just kind of following my muse, and you seem kind of like a kindred spirit in that regard.
Right.
That you don't. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Hey, Norma.
Hey, baby, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
It seems like, I don't know, from my impression that I get of you, and I could be very wrong, it seems like this place and you really connect with one another. Do you have any insights as to why that is? Are you like
I think, a lot of it has to do because I started here at such a young age. I mean, basically as soon as I could work, I was, here at the age of 14. My first day of work, because my grandmother, who was working here, she would drive me up to work every day. And she took a picture of, so proudly of my first day of work. It was June 23rd, 1980. So it's fully documented. So it was a big part of my, I guess my teen years. And as I would cut the grass, I would read all of these stones. And I would just kind of like puzzle and I'd wonder, I wonder what this pet meant to this family.
Right. That's
what type of dog was it? A dog or a cat? And what was so meaningful about this pet that they decided to bury their pet? Because that is like, that's a big thing.
That's a big thing, right? Most people just bury them in their backyard.
Or cremate or something like that.
But to do this
is a big step. To bury in a formal pet cemetery.
Exactly.
So I always, wondered about that. And I also experienced pet loss myself. It was the first time I experienced death. And that was in 1982. We had a family dog that we found abandoned off the Hudson River Parkway, actually. Beautiful dog. She was pure breed Cocker Spaniel. How anyone could abandon her, I don't know, unless it was just an older couple and they just couldn't care for her anymore.
Right.
So the story, I'll just tell you a quick story about this because it's funny. She was a little neglected, but we got her all fixed up and everything, but she was very used to fending for herself. And anytime there was like the slightest crack in the door, she would just get out. And we'd go with the leash trying to find her, and almost every single time she'd have like the garbage can of a neighbor turned over and she'd be like eating out of the garbage, even though we were feeding her very well.
Right.
We were taking care of her. But that's what she did, because I guess that's what she was used to doing to take care of herself.
Right.
So we noticed she was putting on weight. I'm like, this dog's getting fat, so we gotta control this. So we put her on a diet. And then we came home from school one day and we couldn't find her. We didn't get the usual greeting. We knew something was wrong. And there she was in the closet giving birth to like 6 puppies. So we put this dog on a diet, and she was pregnant. Anyway, so of course I wanted to keep all of the puppies. That was not in the cards. So we kept one of them. We found homes with our family members for all of them. And they're all buried here, thankfully. So my first experience really with any type of death was when that dog, Ophelia is her name, the Cocker Spaniel, passed away. And I was going to walk her, and she died when I had the leash around her. I was trying to get her to get up and walk. And it affected me very profoundly. I just had never experienced it before. And in some ways, I thought I had killed her because I was trying to, encourage her to go for a walk.
Right.
And I thought maybe I choked her to death, but it was really just, after thinking about it, I mean, you think about everything when you're a kid, and you think it's your fault. So that weighed very heavily on me for a long time.
I'm sure, but yeah, as you know now, it just happened. The same
It does.
thing happened to my sister's dog. It was sort of fine 1 minute, and then the next minute it was kind of dying.
Right.
And then it was dead a couple hours later. We're not even sure exactly why. It was a 12-year-old pit bull. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the interest that I have in cemeteries, and of course, this place I've always seen my entire life, and I've been interested in it, never really thought to come in, is just, walking around and seeing these gravestones and realizing that every one of these has a story behind it. Do you have anything to say about that? Like, what kind of person is into a cemetery, and why?
Right. Before we go, I just want to show you this plot right here. This is the plot of Irene Castle, and she was a famous flapper dancer from the 1920s.
This is her.
And well, no, this is we had this made up just so people would know who she is. I think she has 5 pets that are buried here, and also a monkey. That she's photographed with. If you Google it, you'll see photographs of her with this monkey called Rastus. Is the monkey's name?
How do you spell it?
Like Rasta, just with an S at the end.
Rastus.
Yeah. So, and then she left New York and she started probably the first organization for pet adoption. It was called Orphans of the Storm, and I think it still exists today. So. Anyway, that's Irene Castle. But getting back to what
is there any reason why hers is right here so prominent, or is just that's happened?
That's where she chose to have her plot, and then we added this little stone just to kind of tell the story, so people would know what they're looking at.
So is this actually where she's buried?
She's not buried here.
She's not buried.
No,
here.
Just her pets.
Because we do
have human burials here, but she's not among the humans that are buried here.
She's not among the humans. So we want to talk about that once we get closer to talking about Pat Shte.
Yep.
But we were just discussing the cemetery person. Is there you've been doing this now for a long time.
Right.
I'm sure you've come across people who are just into this.
So I would say that, back in the day, people would say, oh, it's probably rich, old, eccentric ladies that don't have children, that bury pets. And what I have found is that's like the furthest thing from the truth. It really spans everyone. It's really what everyone has in common is just a deep love for their pet. And that's not saying that somebody who cremates their pet doesn't love their pet, but it's just saying that someone that takes the time to bury their pet, they just love their pet, and there's no demographics that really explain it.
Right.
So it's all religions.
Like
if you look around, you'll see Jewish stars, you'll see crucifixes, you'll see different languages, all different countries and different languages. People of all means. It's not just people that have money. There are people that scrape together whatever they have because they feel this is the right thing to do for their pet.
Right.
So it kind of transcends everything. It's really just what everyone has in common is that they just love their pet. And one thing that we kind of say here is that first of all, we don't choose our pets, they choose us. That's the first thing. And the other thing is that we bury people because we must. We bury pets because we choose to.
Right.
And when you walk around here and you read the stones here and the inscriptions, they're very heartfelt. There's some whimsy to it. There's also a lot of love that you see. All of them have love. You
can really see that. Well, I mean, I think it's true that a lot of people end up loving their pets more than their actual family, because people are, especially in the last 40 years, things are so dysfunctional, it seems, in our society. But yeah, I can see how people really...
Well, I think I would argue, and maybe not argue,
That's
but
fine.
Just say that I think that people consider their pets their family.
Their family, right. Maybe that's a better way to think about it.
When their pet is with them, it's part of their family. And I've had people tell me that they've lost their parents and they've lost their pets. And they have felt more distraught when their pet died, and they feel extreme guilt because they have those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do you navigate that as a...
So In my experience, the reason, I'm trying to make sense of it, and
Right.
First of all, grieving and death is very complicated, and it's different for everybody.
Right.
So it's hard to put it in a single bucket. But when people tell me this, and I kind of, whatever they volunteer to me, because it's a difficult time, so, there's only so much people want to talk about with me. But in my conversations with people, I have found that, and by the way, also in my own experience, because I lost another dog in 2020, very recent, so I kind of experienced and gained a whole new appreciation of what people go through when they lose their pet. Your pet is like part of your family, and everything with your pet is based on routines. So your pet is with you. Maybe your pet either sleeps right next to you or in the bed with you. When you wake up in the morning, you feed your pet. You take your pet for a walk, and there's playtime, and then there's routines in the evening. The whole day is scheduled around your pet.
Right.
And so when your pet passes, and usually that happens very suddenly and abruptly, all of a sudden your schedule of what you're used to for 15, 20 years is turned completely upside down.
Right, you just don't know what to do anymore.
Exactly. It's very disruptive to your life.
Right.
And when any of those things that you did with your pet are scheduled to happen, and your pet has already passed, it's a reminder of what you lost. So the entire day is a reminder that you lost your pet. It's very difficult in the beginning, and eventually, over a couple of weeks, a couple of months, as you start to adjust to your schedule, then you start feeling a little bit better. So in my own personal experience, the first couple of weeks were very difficult. There were a lot of tears, and everything was a trigger and a reminder of the loss of my dog Violet. And she died sometime in late August in 2020. And by, October, things were getting a little bit better. I was a little more emotionally stable. Of course, I missed her terribly, and I still do. But I was able to function. In the beginning, it was difficult to even function. And then in December, we were taking all the Christmas stuff out, and there was a stocking that had her name on it. I was like, oh. So it was so there are going to be things like that happen years later or months later or whatever. But so I think that's when people tell me that they had more difficult time when their pet died than when their parent died, it's just a commentary on that their pet lived with them.
Right.
We don't live with our parents.
It makes more sense. That actually makes a lot of sense to me, because your life is so, as you're saying, is so much more intertwined with your pet than, say, with your elderly parents who you might not live with, and so on and so forth. So very interesting. Do you have any particular graves that you want to show the audience, because they would love to see some of the more...
Sure, let's walk this way.
Because I'm a cemetery guy. I find these things interesting. I'm not quite sure why I do. Do you have any insights into why humans
we'll just, as we're walking by very quickly.
Yeah, please.
So you'll see that pet was born in Rome, Italy, and died here in 1909 and was buried in Hartsdale.
And do we know who owns this dog, the person?
No, unfortunately not.
Gold tip. Are these the oldest ones here?
Well, section we're in right now, this is the oldest part of the cemetery, where I believe the cemetery was originally, they started doing burials.
Now, what's the deal here? Because now
Good, I'm glad you stopped me for this. So this is how graves back in the day used to look. It was they were like lot enclosures with iron fences. It kind of goes back to the Victorian time, and you would see this at human cemeteries as well. And this was here, it was pretty common here as well, but we couldn't keep it up for all of them. So we maintained one of them. We kept this just for posterity purposes.
Right. And so this person, whoever it was,
this is a very old grave.
Bought this plot, and I would imagine that there's many pets in here.
I think there's 5. Yeah. Let me see. Let me check. I have some notes here that I made. So, let's see. This one's dates to 1906. It's 11 Japanese Chin Spaniels belonging to a prominent family of Austrian jewelers.
Oh, wow. So they had the money to buy this plot, maintain it.
So before the Depression, it was a luxury to have a pet, for anybody to have a pet before the Depression. And so when people lost a pet during that time period, they did very grand things. And that's why you see something like this or something like this, which is...
This mausoleum.
This mausoleum. So this one is the Walsh Mausoleum. It was installed in 1914. at a cost for in today's dollars, which would probably be close to about $500,000.
Wow, and who was the Walsh family?
She was married to a real estate magnate, I guess. It's 50 tons, and supposedly word has it that she came here every day to oversee its construction.
And this is just for one pet?
No, there's some spaniels that are in there.
Okay, because I see Toodles. It's so weird because you see this and then all of a sudden, and then you see the name Toodles on here. It's very...
There's the whimsy, and you have this very fancy, elaborate mausoleum, and then you have Toodles.
That's a
you're
great
right,
juxtaposition.
You're right. And that's what makes this place, in my opinion, very special.
Yeah,
you know?
In fact, a person could spend easily 3 days here, a week here, going through all of these amazing headstones and looking.
Look, this is my favorite right here because it's so clever, the doghouse.
That is great. So this is Queenie.
And surprisingly, it's the only doghouse that we have here. Well, actually, there was another one that was put up recently.
That would be like a major...
A common thing, right?
So so is this just the headstone, or is
that's
the
their headstone? No, they're buried below ground.
Below
this
ground.
is the headstone. And all these stones you see here, all these marble ones, you don't get marble monuments anymore because marble's very porous, and so the writing starts to decay over time.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would.
This one,
away.
Babe, is kind of an important one. So Babe was it was a funeral of a celebrated performing terrier that made the news around the world in 1902, and supposedly he was buried in a white satin-lined casket while dozens of his human friends wept. And so you can see this is marble, so part of his leg over the years
it's just so
crumbled
porous.
off. But it was constructed really nicely, and the thing about because he was buried so long ago, it was one of the first burials where the cemetery, when it first started, they had trouble attracting clients, if that's what you want to say. And this was the first sort of celebrity that buried, and it kind of was the linchpin. A lot of people after that said, hey, if Babe is buried here, I want to have my pet buried at Hartsdale.
Right.
And after that, the floodgates kind of opened, and you started having grander burials like the Walsh Mausoleum and some of these other things that you see here.
Do you think people wanted to be near Babe, or that didn't matter at all?
That I don't know. But probably. If we're going to walk by Mariah Carey's plot.
Please.
And I'm sure that someone's like, I want to be near Mariah Carey.
Carey's plot. Right. I was going to ask to go see that one.
Yeah. So we're close to it. That's why I kind of brought you up in this area. But we're just going to make a quick detour. I'm going to show you the oldest surviving monument in the cemetery.
Please.
See the little stone right there? Blag or Blag?
That's it?
So that's it.
This is the oldest one.
Yeah. So in French, that word means joke or prankster. So that was the name of that dog.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, the dog was not, they didn't put the date of death on there. So it's an undated monument. But our historian, Mary Thurston, who lives down in Texas, who's been so helpful to us with the history of the cemetery, she, through her research, found out this Blag was buried in 1898. So, 2 years after the cemetery started.
And just knowing the name, that it means jokester, that adds so much more richness, even though there's only a name on that stone. I could now envision a whole story about this dog just by the name of it. And whether I'm right or not, it's almost irrelevant.
Doesn't matter, right?
Right. That's so cool. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, so we'll walk to Mariah's plot.
So now I know Mariah Carey did not put her name on here. Did she do that on purpose? She just put it as M.
She signed M, yeah. I wasn't working at the cemetery when she buried the pet. And so the people I've spoken with, she didn't attend the burial either. It was a time when she was either dating or married to Tommy Mottola. This is it right here.
Okay.
And I believe he was the one that came up and made all the arrangements.
Interesting. That's I don't want to, that's odd to me, because why spend so much money and obviously the love to bury the pet, but then not come up and be a part of it? I'm not asking you to comment on it.
I guess the only thing I can say is, you and I don't know what it's like to be that famous.
Right. Especially in those years.
Right.
I mean, she was one of the hugest stars in America in those years. So this is Mariah Carey, and this was a cat?
It was a cat, yep.
So now what's the deal here? Are these
Those
put
are
in
begonias.
by you
So
guys?
we have a flower care program. You see, it's pretty uniform.
Yeah, begonias.
This is an optional service that people can subscribe to. Either they can pay for it annually or they can do it forever.
So they pay for the service and then you guys put those in. So
We
it's not
do.
like her representatives
No,
come up
no,
here.
we do all the planting.
So this is a very big Luke
Yes.
Machik, beloved son. What's the oldest in terms of the age of a pet, of a dog?
There was somebody that buried a cat here. I think they told us the cat was 26 years old.
Oh my God.
I mean,
Who knows? How would
who
you know?
knows?
Right.
Most commonly that I see, the oldest cat would be like 21 or 22 years at most.
At most.
And dogs,
14,
17, maybe 18, but 26, I don't know.
26
Now,
is
sometimes people bury birds, and birds can live 50 years. So,
right. Some parrots,
Right.
I heard, live over almost 100 years almost.
Yep.
And it makes you wonder, like, what are you gonna do? Did you make did you take into account that you're gonna die before that parrot does?
Right.
So, Frankenstein.
Right. It's funny.
love
I
it.
passed by that one recently. That's a cool one.
And it's got a Jewish star on it. So this is what makes a place like this so special.
Clever, right?
Right, and not only that, it's just filled with, there's just emotion in there.
Yep.
For some reason, I don't know, I can't quite explain it.
And look,
But I just-
here you have a Jewish star, and you're wishing him a Merry Christmas, Chipper.
You were a Merry Christmas. Wow.
So maybe Chipper was born on Christmas Day. Who knows?
Right. And then it makes you wonder, like, what's the deal with this family? And
Right.
then you have new fur. That's great.
There's another stone. I'm not quite sure where it is.
Okay.
And the dog's name is Led Zepp. And the guy still comes in to visit, and I think it's on the dog's either birthday or the date of death of the dog, and he comes here. He's a biker guy, rock and roll dude, and he drinks the beer at the grave and then he leaves. Every year, that's his ritual.
That's great. And does he talk to anybody, or he's just like, leave me alone, I'm doing my thing alone?
No, he's pretty friendly. I mean, I think he just comes up here and does his thing, but I've talked to him on the phone. He's pretty friendly on the phone.
What's the story here?
This is, somebody is in the process of doing something pretty elaborate here. The doghouse was obviously inspired by the other doghouse that we saw, but she has a lot of, I believe they're all basset hounds that are here. And they're going to be, the gravestones are going to be in the shape of dog bones, and each of the dogs' names will be on each of the dog bones.
Are they already here? Or
They're buried already, and she's working with the monument company. It's been taking a little bit longer than I think she would have hoped, but that's what
I want to go
coming.
see Ming's.
Yep, we're going to do that.
And then I want to talk about that New York Times article. You left paw prints on our heart. I guess people can have more fun. They feel like a little less formal with these gravestones than with a human one. My first foray into getting into cemeteries, I found in the middle of Harriman Park, there's an old abandoned town called Doodletown. And there's a cemetery in the woods there. And there's a gravestone from the 1800s with a guy named Daniel is buried there. And the inscription is what got me, and you probably have heard this before. It said, "Behold me now as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, soon you will be. So prepare for death and follow me." And I just was like, wow.
That's amazing you memorized that.
That's amazing. Well, it struck me. I mean, it never left my mind. Well, one, because it's so true.
Yeah.
But also because it's like, here's Daniel. He's in the middle of the woods. 150 years has gone by since he's dead. Nobody visits him, but he was once alive and we know about it. So I just think, like, I don't know if you agree with me, but cemeteries just give a dignity to the individual that we don't get normally in our day-to-day lives. I guess it's our last time that we can be commemorated before it just steamrolls over all of us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, not. I mean, I guess. I guess I would say I would hope people are celebrated in life as much, if not more, than they are in death. you know, so they can enjoy that during their lifetime.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. The real world
It doesn't
seem
always
to
work that way. No, it doesn't.
It's kind of goes back to like you never know what's gone until what you have until it's gone.
Exactly. We looked at a stone before that was undated. It was an old stone. This one right here, Dottie. This one is dated.
Dottie.
We thought this one was the oldest stone until we, you know, found out the other one. So this is dated for 1899.
Now, interesting, that's the Dodge family, pet of E.M. Dodge. Do we know? Because I did a whole thing on the Dodge family of Riverdale.
So let's see. This Dottie is the companion to the socialite Nina Dodge, who as a child was found abandoned on the streets of Toledo, Ohio by a wealthy philanthropist who adopted her.
She was the abandoned one, not the pet.
She was, and then I guess she raised this dog and then buried the dog here.
That's interesting. I got to look her up now more because the Dodge family was a very prominent copper mining family.
So maybe that was the relationship.
They lived in Riverdale, and it's not that common a name. Well,
Yeah.
sorry,
It's okay. We'll
stepped on your begonia.
It's okay. We'll take care of it.
So Ming, and then
I got one other one to show you before Ming.
Oh, please.
Because it's actually before Ming was buried here. We had a lion cub that was buried here named Gold Fleck. So
Gold Fleck?
Gold Fleck. I'm going to take you to that grave right now.
Please.
It's right here. And so Gold Fleck, I'll start telling you about it as we're approaching. Gold Fleck was owned by a Hungarian princess.
Hungarian princess.
Yeah, this is her
wow.
right here. So she was coming over, she loved animals, and she was also an artist. She was coming over to the United States to do portraits. She was painting portraits of people. And while she was here, and she brought a whole lot of animals with her too. And while she was here, she went to the circus, and she fell in love with this Gold Fleck lion, this lion cub. So she approached the Ringling Brothers, and she said, "Name your price. I have lots of money. I want to buy Gold Fleck." And they said, "Well, Gold Fleck's not for sale." And so she was undeterred. So she was going to try a different way of getting Gold Fleck. So she was painting a portrait of a general in the Civil War. You know, the Civil War was long over. Not that long over, because this is 1912?
1912.
So the Civil War had not ended that long ago, but he was up there in his years, and very well respected. And so she knew that if she asked him, and he asked the Ringling Brothers, that they would turn Gold Fleck over to him because he was, you know, such a respected general from the Civil War. And that's exactly what happened. So, and then the general turned Gold Fleck over to her. They went to the Waldorf. Things didn't work out so well there, so she transferred over to the Plaza. They had a suite all to themselves, Gold Fleck and all the animals that she had with her, and they stayed there for a little while. And then eventually Gold Fleck passed away. So it probably would have been better if Gold Fleck remained with the circus. But she brought him to Hartsdale and buried him here.
Now, he was probably still very little, I would imagine.
Yeah, he was very little still, yeah.
Wow. Gold Fleck. I got to look all this stuff up now. There has to be pictures of this stuff.
There is. And I wrote a historical book about the cemetery, which I'll give you a copy of.
Oh, no kidding.
So, yeah.
Let's definitely, we'll definitely let the audience know about that.
Yep.
So how does a tiger like Ming, who was living in Harlem and apparently died in Ohio, how does Ming end up in the Hartsdale Pet Cemetery?
Well, Ming wasn't always in Ohio. Ming was in New York first. So Ming was owned and purchased probably on the black market by somebody who kept Ming in the housing projects in Harlem.
Right. And we've seen pictures of that on our live stream.
Right. So Ming got older and did what all wild animals do, and got wild.
Got wild.
Apparently what happened was this guy, kind of similar to the princess that we were just talking about before, he had a lot of animals in his apartment, and he introduced a kitten, and Ming started to go after the kitten. And so he didn't want that to happen, so he either put his arm or somehow his arm or leg got entangled with Ming, and it was a very bad bite. So he went to the emergency room, and he tried to tell them that he was bitten by a pit bull, and they kind of like...
No.
So they had a little private chat, and they sent the police to his apartment because they figured it wasn't a pit bull. And if you look online, there's pictures of like, people like rappelling down the apartment with a dart gun, so they could sedate him. And that's what they did. They brought him down, and then they got him relocated to the animal sanctuary in Ohio, which is where he lived the rest of his life. While all that was happening, there is a plot holder here named Henry Jones, and he took a very big interest in this story. And he felt very strongly that Ming should be brought back to New York. Live his life in Ohio, but when the time comes, that he should be brought back to New York and laid to rest here at Hartsdale. His initial plan was to do a formal burial, but the logistics of bringing an 800-pound tiger from Ohio here and then finding the right size plot and casket and all that, it just was too much. So they had Ming cremated when he passed away, and his ashes were brought here. And they were still, it was a pretty big container that contained his ashes. And it was a fairly private ceremony. It was just Henry and his girlfriend, and then myself and some other staff at the cemetery. What happened to the guy in
Harlem who owned him?
Well, I think from what I hear, he has visited.
He has visited.
He has visited here. I've never met him, but from what I understand, he did visit.
So this is just dedicated to a memory of a war dog.
Right. This is not Ming, obviously. This is this was the first public memorial for military animals, dogs that served during wartime, and this is World War I, and that's why you don't see it designated as World War I, because after World War I, they had no idea there'd be a World War II or any other war after that.
They thought it was the one that was going to end all
So that's why it's just the World War.
Interesting.
There are no pets that are buried here. But it's a memorial for those dogs that served, and it's kind of taken on for any dogs that have served in the military, as well as any service animals.
Right.
So that's what this represents. It was built by public contribution, and actually, I was telling you, my grandfather was a monument letter. His relative, Robert Caterson, is one of the designers of this.
That's very beautiful. I mean, just the way that comes out of the rock, and they have the carving here in the front here, but it's in the back here.
And there's
very elaborate.
And there's a lot of symbolism. If you look at the helmet, it's dented because there's shrapnel there.
Right.
The canteen is what the dogs would bring. So, it was trench warfare, and the dogs would go, and there were landmines everywhere. So the dogs very courageously would go to the trenches and see if there were soldiers in there and see if they were alive. And if they were, they would leave the canteen there.
Oh my God.
If the soldier wasn't alive, they wouldn't leave the canteen there. So they were very smart and trained and very courageous. And the stories about them after World War I came back to the United States, and people said, we have to recognize
their service.
Their service. And so that's what this is all about.
It really is actually quite amazing. So where is Ming now?
Okay, let's go this way. We'll walk down the staircase. It's all the way at the very front, and actually here, maybe you can take a far picture. You see where those hydrangeas are in the corner right there?
Yeah.
That's where we're going.
Okay, cool. Okay? All right, so the hydrangeas in the corner.
Yep.
Know them very well. So as we walk over there, I want to kind of ease into the Pat Shte story, because that's, of course, how I got my excuse to finally get up to this place after seeing it since 1976. How does a story like that originate?
I was contacted, it was a cold call by Andrew Kay.
The author of the New York Times article.
The author of the article.
Right.
And he called me and was just asking, he identified himself as a New York Times reporter, and he said, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And we talked for about an hour, and it covered a lot of territory. And at the time, I didn't really know he was searching for a story. I thought that he had a story, and he was asking me these questions for background on another story he might have been doing. But he was very interested in the things I was saying, and we didn't talk about human burial in the first conversation at all. We just talked about the cemetery. And procedures and things like that.
I mean, he's an excellent writer, and it sounds like from what you're saying, he's a really good reporter as well, just the craft of doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He just seemed very, very interested, and he asked so many great questions. Really smart guy and very soft-spoken, and so Anyway, he said, after the 45 minutes or so that we spent talking, he said, do you mind if, he's like, I have to get going, but do you mind if we continue the conversation? I said, no, not at all. So we spoke a few more times after that. And each time we spoke, I sensed that the story was becoming about Hartsdale and it wasn't about something else. And then we started talking about human burial. And he wanted to know, he wanted to interview people that were planning on being buried here. And that, of course, is kind of a difficult thing because the people that are already buried here are buried here.
Right.
But there's no way for us to cross-reference in our records who's planning on being buried here. I mean, people may tell us, but we put it in their file, but we don't. There's no way for me to say, okay, give me a list of all the people that are planning on being buried here. Because first of all, people can change their mind also.
Right, exactly.
So we have no way.
Let's walk up to the Shte.
Sure.
Area. As we leave, since we've already heard the Ming story, we'll just show the audience this, and then let's walk up to see Pat.
Yep.
So
we can go out this way if you want.
Okay, cool. So the article, he wasn't really telling you initially what it was really kind of all about.
No. Well, and he didn't know about the Shte story at all.
Oh, so this kind of evolved.
No. He was just talking to me, trying to get some type of story. He was looking for a story. So we were just talking about human cremains, in general, the practice of people wanting to be buried with their pets. And just in passing, at the very end of one of our conversations, we had talked for hours already, I said very anecdotally, I was like, there's this story that happened a couple of years ago. I don't know if it means anything, but here, I'm just going to tell it to you. And that became the story. Then he was laser focused on that, and everything else kind of dropped by the side, and that became the story.
I mean, it was a brilliant story because it weaved this extremely poignant personal story with the cemetery and with the history of the cemetery as well, in a way, and intertwining with you, and it was just a really well done article. So I was wondering if you had pitched that to him, but no, he came to you and it evolved. He came to us,
and then we were just talking. We were organically just talking about the cemetery. And the more we talked, and I guess, that's why he's so good at what he does.
Exactly.
The more we talked, it just kind of reminded me of things. And I was like, whoa, maybe he might be interested in this story. And I mentioned it to him, and then, like I said, that became the story.
So you had already known obviously about this Shte story because
I was involved in it.
You were right. So really, really unbelievably powerful story. I could barely get through reading it.
It was powerful as it was unfolding for me,
Well,
talk
about that.
And then it became even more powerful after I read the article because I knew nothing about her life. Andrew did not share that with me until I read the article.
Really?
So I didn't know about, that she had lost her son. Actually, he did reveal to me that she lost her son, but he was vague about that to me. When he came here to interview me just before the article, because the other thing he did, because he had all the facts about the article. I shared emails with him that Bruce Johnson, the lawyer, and I exchanged. Of course, I had to get his permission because all that stuff is personal and confidential.
Exactly.
Lawyer documents right here.
Well, first, before we see that gravestone, where was she originally?
Up where we were.
Up where we were.
Up by where the mausoleum is. I don't know the exact location, but in that area.
But it was just unmarked?
Initially, it was unmarked, but they ordered a stone.
Okay.
So when I first heard from Bruce, that's why I was so shocked. Because most people, especially if it's a human, they want to pick out the plot, they want to be here for the burial, and they want to, select the monument and everything. They're very involved in it. They are with their pets, and especially it's more heightened when it's a human that's involved as well.
Right.
And here's somebody that just nobody was going to be involved, and so I checked a couple times because I say we really prefer if somebody picks the plot out instead of us. And he said basically there was no family or friends, just you can go ahead and do it. So I did. I picked something out within whatever the price range was that he wanted. I picked what I thought was a good plot. I attended the burial because I felt like somebody should be there.
Somebody should be there, yeah.
I mean,
and that actually speaks to your character too.
Well, thank you. And the other thing too is like, I was puzzling. I was like, for someone in Westchester to want to be buried here, okay, you know, like you said, you used to pass by the cemetery all the time, so you knew about it. Here's the only thing I knew about this person is that she lived in Mexico.
Right.
So how would somebody from Mexico, I didn't know whether she was a Mexican citizen or American citizen.
So to you, it's just this random person getting buried here with no connection that you know of to this place, and you're just like, what the hell is going on?
That,
and then,
it was totally puzzling, because somebody wants to be buried here usually has some type of connection here.
right. And she did, you just didn't know.
I didn't know, and
Right.
you know, I was relying completely on Bruce, you know, and Bruce didn't know either.
And Bruce didn't know either.
So to tell me, he said, nope, just go. So he picked out a stone. And he was basically, the stone that he picked out was basically as plain vanilla as you just had her name on it and her dates and nothing else. And so that was all up there. And then I got an email from him just before he was about to go on vacation about a year and a half later. And he said, you know, there's this funny thing. He's like, I was talking to one of her friends in Mexico, and apparently she had a son that passed away in his teen years or something. She had a teenage son that passed away, and that person said that she thought that her son's cremated remains and their family pets were buried at Hartsdale. He said, but I told him that, you know, that's not possible because, you know, you guys only recently were able to start burying humans. And I said, that's actually not correct. We were burying humans since the 20s, but there was an interruption of that by the Human Division of Cemeteries for about 9 months during like 2011 or something like that. But then, you know, there are regulations, so we've been burying, you know, people for a long time, except for those 9 months.
Right.
So he then gave me the last name, because Shte was not in our records, but her son's last name was Bassett. And when I did it, I found like an immediate hit. And it's like,
You must have felt,
like my
describe
voice is
that
cracking
feeling.
right now. When I saw the records, and then when I saw that I came outside and I walked here, and there was a stone, and here's the name, not only of him, but her name, Patricia, is on the stone too.
God.
It was such a profound moment for me. I can't even begin to tell you.
I can only imagine, because that article was absolutely heart-wrenching, and being a part of it, I could only imagine that feeling of discovery and then the whole emotions of this. So here she is. Here's the woman in the article.
So in my mind, right away, I said she had always intended to be with her son, and that's where she needs to be. And so, you know, having gone to law school, and I've also taken a course in trusts and estates and wills and everything, you're just to follow the four corners, they say, of the will. And so the will didn't say I want to be buried with my son. It just said I want to be buried in Hartsdale Pet Cemetery, and that's it. So in Bruce's mind, he had carried out the will. As the executor, he'd done his job, and legally he had. But I felt that morally, emotionally, everything, that they needed to be together. I mean, the fact that her name is on the stone, there's no better proof than that.
Area. Exactly.
I mean, that is evidence that she intended to be with her son.
So in this woman's life, and we read about it in the newspaper, and there was nothing particularly special about this woman. Just like every one of us, she lived and she died in relative anonymity. You're the reason why her last wishes were followed, and you know, you really need to be commended for that, Ed, because you didn't have to take her remains and bring them down here.
I didn't. You know, I asked Bruce about it because I wanted to see if he had any legal restriction why we couldn't do it, and he said, listen, he's like, you're free to do what you want. He said, there are no more funds in the estate, so if you're going to do this, you're doing it at your own expense. And I said, I'm fine with that. I checked, you know, with my dad, because he's the ultimate, you know, he's the president of the cemetery.
Right.
And of course he was fine with it too after I told him the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, what does it take, half an hour of
So
digging
we moved her. The question is, when Bruce and I talked about it, should we move him to be with her up there, or should we move her to be here?
I think you made the right choice.
We decided to move her here. And again, I attended that burial just like I had the other one, and it gave me a lot of peace that I had done that. And you know, I will tell you, you said, you know, you to be commended and everything. After the New York Times article, I got a lot of letters and emails and cards, phone calls from people. It was like, I'd never experienced anything like that before. It's extremely overwhelming. And people are telling me what a wonderful thing I did and what a good human being I am and everything. And it was overwhelming to hear that, actually. Not that I don't think I'm a good person,
Right.
but I mean, it was almost like putting me up as like, this hero or something. And my stock response to all of them, and I really still feel this way, is that I did what I feel that any other human would have done in the same circumstances.
Yes, it was essentially a very human.
It's a human thing to do.
You did.
I was just being human.
It
That's
cut
really,
away all the corporate, the legal. You just did something.
I was not a
human.
hero. I was being a human. That's what I was being.
Right. I agree with that. But still, a very nice and thoughtful human, and that's rare in today's world. So what a story. So, Ed, we're almost out of batteries, and we could have been here for an entire week looking at all these stones, but I think we did what we set out to do, which was tell the story of the cemetery and look at some interesting stones and also find out a little bit more about this incredibly poignant story about Patricia Shte and her son. Is there any last words you'd like to share with the audience out there before we say goodbye?
I would just really say that sometimes people are a little judgy about pet burial, and I would just say that, and a lot of times it's people that have never had a pet. They just don't understand. So I would say that death and grieving is very individual, and that we all process it differently, and what may be right for one person may not be right for another. It's not right, wrong, or indifferent. It's really just what's best for that person to help them get through the grief, and just to be sensitive to that.
So Ed, we ran out of batteries over there by the Shte grave site. So you had one more thing that you wanted to show me, and I'm actually glad that we came out back out to this area, because what are we looking at here?
So this is actually my family's plot. All four of my grandparents are buried here, so it's not just Patricia Shte that's buried here, but there are plenty of other humans, including my family members.
Well, that's what I was going to ask real quick before we get into that. Do you have to have a pet if you're a human here? Do you have to have a pet?
No, you don't have to. There's no rule about that, but most people do. As a practical matter, most people bury their pet here, and then over time they say, this is a really beautiful place. I wonder if I can be buried here.
Right.
And then we tell them they can, and a lot of times they're just ecstatic about that, and they say, well, I can't think of a better place to be than here.
But do you have to be cremated in order to be here?
For humans, so we're not licensed to bury human bodies.
Right.
So it has to be cremated remains, and I guess the understanding is that once a human body is cremated, it doesn't fall into the strict definition of a human any longer. And so ashes are just, I hate to say this because my family members are also ashes too, but it's property at that point in time. And you can do whatever you want with property. You can sprinkle it over the ocean, golf course, or a pet cemetery. So that's how humans are able to be buried here, as long as they're cremated. And for some people, it's a big hurdle for them to get over, because you're asking people who have buried their pets because they believe in burial and not cremation. You're asking them to do what they would do, what they didn't do for the pets, but they have to do for themselves. And that's a big hurdle. So there's not a lot of people that choose this, but there's about 900 or 1,000 people that have done it so far since we started. And the records go back to the 20s, maybe even earlier. But we've been burying human ashes since the 20s.
It's a very beautiful place, and if you love a lot of people love their pets more than their family, so why not be buried with your pets? So your family decided.
All four of my grandparents are buried here. These are my dad's parents, my grandparents, Edward and Bertha. Edward, who we talked about before, he had his monument business. And then his wife, my grandmother Bertha, she worked here from 1974 until 1991. So they have a very big connection with the cemetery. Really couldn't think of a better place for them to be buried.
Now I noticed. Well, who are these?
These are my mom's parents, the Drews, Frank and Virginia Drew. And they were very close with my dad's parents, and they retired to Florida. One of the puppies I was telling you about before, they had Princess, and Princess is buried here. And they thought they wanted to be buried here as well. And so the blank stones.
It's a beautiful spot with the shade.
It is.
And the tree.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
So the blank stones are for the future. My parents would like to be buried here when their time comes, and my aunt and uncle would like to be buried here as well. My uncle has worked here since my dad took over in 1974, and my aunt is my dad's sister.
And who and are these your pets here?
My brother Brian, he lives up in Vermont, but he works for the cemetery remotely. He did work here at one time. So Nellie and Coach are both of his dogs, and Nellie was the mascot actually of the cemetery.
Oh wow.
He adopted her in 2003, I guess it was. She came to an adoption, and he fell in love with her and adopted her, and she was the mascot here until she passed in 2017.
So of course this begs the question, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that none of us want to think about our own demise, but it's a beautiful spot, and I've spent my entire life here. So yeah, I can see myself being buried here. Yes.
Yeah, in fact, I may be calling you to join you, Ed. Anyway, Ed.
We'll have a big party.
Yeah, exactly. So Ed, thank you very much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate your generous giving of your time. This was amazing. I'm sure the audience is going to love it. And since I already asked you for your last words over there, we'll just say goodbye to the audience. Take care, guys. Thank you so much.